Welcome to Who Wrote That Up for You, a daily podcast that shines a light on the American justice system and its role in empowering the powerful to take from you. The justice system is the only branch of your government where an individual rather than the collective can make the system act for you. It puts power in the individual's hands, but it's broken and being used against you at a time when you need it most.
And we are live on Who Wrote That Up for You. Today is Friday, September 16th, 2022. I am Sonia Ebron, co-founder at Courtroom 5.
I am Deborah Sloan, the other co founder at Courtroom 5.
And we have a fantastic show lined up for you today. In a few moments, we will hear from Camila Lopez, who is the co-founder and chief executive at People Clerk. It's a wonderful application for a web app for small claims cases, and we'll hear a good bit more about that. A little further in the show, we will speak with Jason Tashea, who is a lawyer and journalist who's helping us understand the connections between law and technology. But first, Deborah, what is on your mind today?
Let's talk a little bit about the Supreme Court. About 10 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court revised its rules to stop unrepresented litigants from arguing before it. Now, in order to go before the Supreme Court, you need a lawyer. That pretty much is shutting out citizen litigants as at the very top of the judicial system. So it's no wonder that these lower courts and the state courts they're okay with denying unrepresented litigants their rights to redress a harm done or to defend themselves.
That is outrageous. That is a shame. I remember the last time I read my Constitution, I saw something about our right to petition government, and it doesn't say anything about having to hire a lawyer to do that. That is really unfortunate. And I'll just share, given you say this decision is 10 years old, but given just the direction of the court at the highest levels lately, we can't say a whole lot about their respect for anybody's constitutional rights. That is unfortunate to hear. Thank you for bringing that up. All right. Who Wrote That Up for You is sponsored by Courtroom 5. And at Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people, in particular to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. And so if you're in court without a lawyer, or if you need to sue someone and can't afford legal representation, get yourself over to courtroom5.com, try it out for free, and see if it is able to offer you some assistance there. So with that, it is my great pleasure to bring on to the show Camila Lopez. Camila, welcome to Who Wrote That Up for You.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about People Clerk and in particular why you started it.
So, People Clerk empowers individuals and small businesses to navigate small claims court on their own. Small claims or disputes, they range, but disputes under 10K in general, like contract cases, car accident cases, and security deposit cases. I'm an attorney, and I always had family and friends reaching out to me every time they had a problem. I kept on trying to refer them to attorneys, but attorneys didn't want to take cases that were
Mm.
$3,000, $2,000. The economics just did not make sense for them to hire to help a self-represented or to help a litigant with their case. So I started going to small claims court, watching hundreds of cases, and I
Mm.
found that there were two big issues. People were procedurally showing up to the hearing unprepared. They were missing one of the key steps in the process. And
Mm.
substantively, they were handing the judge their phone, asking the judge to go scroll through text messages. Judges were getting extremely frustrated, so they did not have their evidence prepared for the hearing. So that's why my co-founder and I launched People Clerk to help with procedurally helping you get your day in court, and then making sure that once you have your day in court, you have your evidence prepared for your hearing.
That's
Mm. That's
extraordinary. What
great.
a wonderful service. Where are you available now? Uh,
Yeah, right now, all 58 California counties and in New York City. We're hoping to launch in Texas and Florida soon.
Fantastic.
Wow.
That's some rapid progress. Congratulations on that. Well, tell us more then, Camila, about how People Clerk works. Like, what would the experience of a user be?
So you come onto the People Clerk website, you answer simple questions, normally takes less than 10 minutes, like who are you suing, why are you suing, and how much you're suing for. We prepare the lawsuit documents. You then upload all your evidence. You're going to have text messages, contracts, receipts, everything you have to be able to prove your case. And we create a judge friendly evidence packet. You then use the portal to understand how you file your case. Then the next step is notifying the other party that they have been sued. And then lastly is getting prepared for the hearing. So we take you step by step on how to handle a small claims case.
Wow.
Extraordinary. Looks like you thought it all through.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Hasn't been easy, but we're on the
Right.
same, right mission, help self-represented litigants get their day in court.
That's what it's about. Exactly right. Deborah, did you have a question?
Do they, so you give them like almost like a cheat sheet,
Cheat sheet,
and
but yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
they go into court and basically read it?
So not exact. So think about it like a streamlined case management system for small claims. So in that aspect, it looks a little bit like Courtroom Five, but it's very specific to small claims cases, and you walk you through how to prepare the lawsuit, how to file it, how to notify the other party they have been sued, and then a lot of content with how to prepare for the hearing and what to expect.
Got it.
So all the tools you need to be able to handle a small claims case.
Okay.
That is
That's,
fantastic.
that sure is.
Yeah,
I love it.
it is. You and I, Camila, are fellow travelers in so many different ways. I know
Yeah.
since we're both alumni of the Duke Law Tech Lab here in Durham. We are both. Our companies are both graduates of the TechStars Accelerator. We're both BIPOC women, right? Startup founders in legal tech. And so many other areas, and running investor-backed startups and sort of trying to figure out the best solutions to our customers' problems. We are also, as you know, two of the four founding board members of the Justice Technology Association, and it's a direct-to-consumer trade organization for legal tech companies. Tell me now, present company excluded, who's your favorite other Justice Tech company? There's so many out there. Who do you like? Who do you want to call out today?
Obviously, Courtroom Five. I mean, we have a tab on People Clerk with like companies we love, and Courtroom Five is there. I'm a huge fan, definitely huge fan. So outside of Courtroom Five, I would definitely say Boundless.
Hmm.
My husband needed a marriage-based green card, and when we did that process, I hadn't heard of legal tech. I was, just in law school, had no idea of what was going on in the space, and we hired a lawyer, paid thousands of dollars to be able to help us with the marriage-based green card process. Fast forward to launching in legal tech, I started looking more towards what was out there, and my dad needed a marriage based green card for his wife. And that's where I found Boundless, and he was able to use
Hmm.
it and absolutely obsessed.
Extraordinary.
Wow.
Boundless is a fantastic company. Those are goals for me. I got to tell you, so
Yeah, me
good,
too.
good, good call out. They will be happy to hear that they're one of both of our favorite Justice Tech companies. That's fantastic. Camilla, where can our listeners find you and People Clerk online?
So www.peopleclerk.com, and I'm active on Twitter at C Lopez or Cami Lopez, I think, on Twitter.
We'll find you. No worries.
You'll find me.
We'll share your contacts in the show notes. Camilla, thank you so much for joining us, telling us about your fantastic web application there. We wish you, as you know, the best of luck and continued success there. Thanks again for
Thank you.
joining us. We'll have you back
Thank you
on
for
set.
having me.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, fantastic, fantastic. So, well, Deborah, tell us about the winners of yesterday's challenge and what do we have for folks coming up?
All right. Yesterday's challenge was kind of a story. Uh, uh, Let's see. Kelsey filed a lawsuit against Dr. Fig Newton for medical malpractice. Dr. Newton filed a motion to dismiss, asserting, among other things, that Kelsey failed to state a cause of action. The question was, what does Dr. Newton mean? And answer, Dr. Newton is saying that something is wrong with the complaint. Sometimes a plaintiff will not assert all of the elements that support their claim. If they don't, then the complaint can be dismissed. Elements are like ingredients in a cake. A complaint must show facts of all the elements of a claim. Let's look back at earlier this week, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, when we talked about the elements of a negligence claim. They are duty, breach, causation, and harm. If somebody, for example, drove a truck through your living room and hurt you, your complaint must state the facts for each of those four elements. For duty, you can say the truck driver had a duty to drive responsibly. For breach, he breached that duty when he drove the truck through your house. Causation. But for the truck striking your house, a ceiling fan and sheetrock would not have fallen on your head. And then harm. You were taken to an emergency room for scratches and a concussion from the falling sheetrock and ceiling fan. Kelsey needed all of the elements of a medical malpractice claim on her complaint. If it's not there, then the complaint can be dismissed for for failure to state a claim.
Oh, that is fantastic. And our winners are?
The winners of yesterday's quiz, let me get it. The winners are, the answer then. Oh, the winners are Jeff and Roland, Jeff D and Roland W. Congratulations, Jeff and Roland. They tied because they entered their answers in the same email. That's why we have two answers to that.
Congratulations
Okay.
to Jeff and Roland.
Oh,
Fantastic.
okay. Let's take a look at today's question. It seems really, really simple. You can see it on your screen there. The question is, in the law, what is an admission? In the law, what is an admission? To take the challenge, send your responses to quiz@courtroom5.com. That
Fantastic.
email is running along the bottom of the screen there. All right.
Fantastic. That is great. So it looks like our second guest is having some difficulties joining us. And so we'll give him a moment or two to figure that out. In the interim, I really wanted to chat about yesterday's quiz and that failure to state a
Mm,
a guest earlier
mm.
this week, if you recall, Brian on Monday, Lukadenovich, was discussing the frequency with which courts dismissed plaintiffs' claims. And this just reminds me of that. It is so important to not only get those elements right, right? We know that every claim, every defense, in every jurisdiction, whatever jurisdiction you're in, has some things that must be proven, some elements that must be proven to be able to make somebody liable. And if you
Exactly.
don't, as you explained, if you don't have facts supporting each of those elements, well, your claim can be dismissed. What's interesting to me about that is that that's not the only thing you have to do to ensure your complaint isn't dismissed. We've seen, even in our own cases, a number of times where the other side's lawyer, our opponent's lawyer, came up with some novel reason, right, to dismiss a claim against their client. It's really fascinating. And if they can make that case, well, the claims can be dismissed, despite the fact that you have supported all of the elements in your case. So just the law is just very intricate and interesting in that regard. And so
Exactly.
at this time, we do have Jason available. Jason Tashea is a journalist, a lawyer, working to help us better understand the impact of technology on the law and the law on technology. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Sonia.
Great to see you.
Too.
You have been you've been working on building a new fellowship program. I know to help improve access to justice and the courts. I've been really interested to hear from you. What are you doing there? What are you up to over there?
Great, I appreciate it. And Deborah, nice to meet you as well. I've seen your name for years now, but I don't think we've ever had the chance, so it's nice to put a face
Same here.
to
Nice
it.
to meet you.
Uh, Sonia, to your question, so I'm working with Tanina Rostain at Georgetown Law Center on building what we're calling the Judicial Innovation Fellowship Program. And this idea is taking, we've seen this in other areas of government over the last decade. There's the Presidential Innovation Fellowship that sends technologists into federal agencies. There's Tech Congress that puts technologists in legislative offices at the federal level. And we've seen stuff at the state level too on this. But we've never touched the courts with this model of taking technologists, bringing them into a justice agency, in this case the courts, and helping them build new technologies that helps improve the public's access to justice. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're creating an on-ramp for technologists and designers to spend a year in state and tribal courts to build and test new access to justice technologies.
That is fascinating. You've got a fascinating background as both a lawyer and a technologist and a journalist. I must add that. My sister's a physician, and I always pick on her because she barely knows how to use a smartphone, much less a computer or any of those things. And I think lawyers are second only to doctors. In their facility with technology. We had and I love picking on Elizabeth. We had a lawyer earlier this week who had difficulty finding the mute button on her machine. Those sorts of things. I won't pick on y'all too much, but you're familiar with the difficulties that lawyers have with technology, and you have certainly your training and background. You've managed to overcome that. It's fascinating to me that you're now bringing that into courts, which are of course filled with lawyers, right? To sort of get over some of those challenges. Can you tell me again what the name of that project is? We'd like to call that out a bit
It's
more.
the Judicial Innovation Fellowship.
Fantastic. Well, as I said, I've been wanting to hear a lot about that, so I appreciate you sharing that as well. So next question for you. Last winter, you released a speculative fiction series, all right? Very interesting. If you want to tell us a little bit more about that genre, but specifically about the criminal justice system. And, as somebody who spent most of their time as a journalist and a researcher writing nonfiction, you're famous for the Justice Tech Download, for instance. I want to understand what led you to make that switch.
Yeah, so as I was a journalist for 5 or 6 years, primarily writing for the American Bar Association Journal, but also publications like Wired. And it was a great way to begin to wrap my head around all the things you were talking about, all the things we aren't taught in law school. How are they affecting justice and other types of government systems? And journalism was a really good avenue for that for me. It was basically an unpaid PhD, or I guess in this case, a paid PhD, but without the letters at the end. And at the end of a lot of my interviews, you'd be talking to these national experts in X, Y, and Z, and then we'd get done with whatever the immediate thing we were talking about, right? That thing that's in the news. And then they'd say something as an aside like, just wait 5 years until this insane thing you've never heard of happens. And that always was more interesting to me, but it's not news, right? Because it's still speculative. And so I had all of these ideas floating around the back of my head, and I wanted to be able to do something with them, but academia and journalism doesn't lend itself to it. But speculative fiction does. Basically, you take a nucleus of what's happening now, and then you throw it into the future, and you kind of see what the ethical, moral, legal, social implications of that thing are. So, for example, talking about brain-computer interfaces and how that could be used by probation and parole to diminish the senses of people. So the ability to see color or to taste sweetness if they commit a parole violation. So you're no longer putting people in jail for a technical violation of their release. However, it is a way that science could take away something from someone who's still on the outside, who's not currently incarcerated. So that, for example, that was one of the stories. The other thing that I wanted to accomplish is we are all very good, all of us within the space, whether criminal justice or civil justice, very good at talking to the choir And I wanted to find new on ramps to get people that would otherwise care about these issues into our space. And fiction is a much lower barrier than like my 25 pages on modern court technology, right? Like with all the citations and the footnotes and all that nonsense. Like this was a way to make it interesting, compelling. It's rooted in where we are now in the way that we treat people within these systems and the immoral way that we treat people within these systems. And so there's that familiarity there, especially those that were showing up for protests in 2020, that then this can then get people thinking about, well, what's the role of technology in this and where could this possibly take us? What are the fights that we should be having now to make sure we don't go through these gates to get towards these darker futures?
That's
Wow.
extraordinary. Deborah, you have a question there?
Oh no, I'm a librarian. I love footnotes, but I like the idea of speculative fiction on this topic. It's really, I'm fascinated. You got to give me all the information about your fiction. So,
Yep, we'll have it in the show notes for
yep,
sure.
yep.
Interesting. Jason, you led that answer by separating out the sort of journalism that you do, the reporting that you do on law and technology from your speculative fiction project. And I've been a subscriber of your Justice Tech download for a while. Love reading it.
Thank
I
you.
never miss an episode, a news note here because although what you're reporting is actually happening, it's not fiction. You do a really good job. Maybe it's in the organization or just the way you write about what's happening to sort of point the directions in which things may go off the rails there.
Mm.
I think it's, I almost leave reading it with a nightmare. All these and so it's not too far then to step into speculative fiction from that. I definitely see a bridge that you're working to cross. It's wonderful that you're doing that.
I appreciate it. And I think one of the most common pieces of feedback is that this speculative fiction series, which was called 40 Futures and can be found on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all of that, it was that it didn't go far enough, right? Like, I definitely pulled stories that I had started writing because the news beat me to the punch.
Right.
Which means I'm not quite doing my job yet as a fiction writer. I'm still figuring those muscles out. But yeah, I mean, there's definite dark times depending on what part of the news you're reading and how close you're paying attention.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Very important for us to just be aware of these issues and to do everything we can to have some positive impact on the direction they're going. So fantastic. Jason, it's fantastic to have you on. Thank you so much for the work you do. Obviously, best of luck in the continuing work. I'll keep reading you, and we'll have you on back on again soon. Thanks so much for joining us on Who Wrote
Perfect.
That.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. Good to see you.
You bet.
Take care.
Fantastic. Just a fantastic couple of conversations there. I'm thinking about this being Friday, the first week of our podcast, the end of the first week here. I can't think of a better way to launch a
Mm.
podcast than the guest we've had this week. It is going to be, we've just had some extraordinary conversations all week. I want to thank all of our guests for helping us launch the podcast this week. And it's going to be hard to top that. Although we've got a tremendous lineup. I've seen some of the folks that we expect to speak with next week and the week beyond. But I'm just absolutely enthralled by the conversations we've had this week.
I agree, and not just that. It's that we're learning so much. We've learned so much from them, and I have a lot of books to read now, and a lot of follow up to do because there's just so much, just a wealth of information they've given us, and just some just really solid advice, And so, one thing, can I harken back to something we talked about earlier? Um, with Camilla with small claims court. We're pretty much doing. She said we're pretty much doing the same thing at courtroom five, and we are. And I could see the parallels between what she's doing and what we're doing with people we're talking about today about people going into court without a cause of action, basically. And that's I know what she's dealing with is what are you going to arm people with going into court, and that's what this show is about, basically. How do you rep when you're going to court?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, it is we explicitly don't do small claims because folks like Camila are really handling that
Hmm.
territory. You know, our customers are handling somewhat more difficult cases, if you will, the foreclosures, the bankruptcies, the bitter divorces, and so on. But nonetheless, she was absolutely right. The work is very similar in terms of preparing self-represented litigants to be able to handle their business in court capably. And so, fantastic. Just really happy to have spoken with them both and all of our guests this week. Thanks again to all of our guests for helping us launch. Who wrote that up for you? That's all we have for you today. We will take the weekend off and see you again this time on Monday with a whole new slate of fantastic guests. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Are you feeling beleaguered, angry, or afraid, as if things are spinning out of control and you're powerless to stop them? It's easy to just let things slide and hope they don't get worse. But they often do get worse. The thing is, you're not powerless. Our courts belong to us, and their purpose is to give power to the powerless. Don't let your grievances pile up without redressing them. You can handle this in court. Or, if someone takes you to court, you can take them to school.